Joshua Broome was in the adult film industry and one of its top performers. We're talking about the porn industry for 6 years. And then God saved him, redeemed him, washed him in his blood. He's white as snow. And now he's one of the top voices against the sexually charged nature of our culture, which never remains neutral. It will always target the family, children, as a way to destroy that which God declared precious and that which God put his people on the front lines in order to exercise dominion, to promote his values, and to protect the fatherless, to protect children, those, if you haven't noticed, who have become the number one targets of our culture of death today. Joshua Broome joins me today to tell his story, to awaken you to act in this moment. Buckle up, you're in for a treat. I'm Seth Gruber, and this is Unaborted. Before we jump in, we want to thank our sponsor of Unaborted here. That is Every Life Diapers. This is America's pro-life diaper company. Did you guys know? I've been telling you this, but like you gotta tell all your friends about this. This is crazy. Every major diaper company in America, all 8 of them, either financially support or rhetorically support the abortion industry. Some of them were putting out ads when Roe v. Wade got overturned, offering to pay for their employees to like fly to states where abortion was more accessible to kill their children. That's weird La La Land stuff right there. Pro-life diaper company, Every Life, the only pro-life diaper company in America. And guess what? They give a portion of their profits back to pro-life ministries like ours at the White Rose Resistance and pregnancy resource centers all around America. Listen, you can't defeat a culture of death by funding a culture of death. If you want to build a culture of life, you've got to fund that culture of life and be a steward of the funds God's given you. So you use code Seth10, that's Seth10, you get 10% off your first order. Let them know that we sent you and you're supporting our ministry and you're funding a culture of life. Promo code Seth10, everylife.com, everylife.com, Every Life, the only pro-life diaper company in America. Joshua, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So we're here today for the Turning Point USA Faith Pastors Summit, which was co-founded by Charlie Kirk and my pastor Rob McCoy, and just brings together such incredible people that I think a lot of people in the church sometimes have not heard of before.
Sure.
Because as you and I know, a lot of churches in America and pulpits, they don't want to talk about issues that might be edgy, that might drive away some of their congregants, and obviously porn would be one of those. My goodness. Tell us the stats. I want you to tell your story, Joshua, but tell us the stats, because I've read some of them. How pervasive is this thing called porn actually, even in the church in America today?
Yeah, well, to your point, so the totality of it, you're talking about $100 billion industry that's fueled by viewership. So it's monetized through viewership. Any monetization strategy you see on social media, it's straight from the pornography industry. So MindGeek specifically, like anything you'll see on YouTube's, Facebook, Instagram, anything that's monetized. That strategy, it was implemented and taken from what porn has been doing for a long time.
So you're saying they were the first to do it?
Oh, yes. Like any kind of technology or any kind of advancement in that realm, it's like they're at the first in the forefront. I mean, you're talking $100 billion industry. And
what else is that size of an industry?
Nothing. So I mean, you're talking when we're talking about revenue, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, all combined
are less than
that. And then regarding viewership, between 32 and 35% of all the data transferred on the internet on a daily basis is pornography. And then just to make it practical, you take everyone that visits Twitter, Amazon, and Hulu, combine them all, and that's how much people are watching porn on a daily basis. And what's scary about that is just 3 years ago, average age of exposure, first time exposure, 11 years old. Now it's 8 years old.
Yeah, I heard that 8.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it has to do with legislation, because on Twitter, there's legislation around marketing that's decades old, where they made these laws about, you could run these advertisements regarding marketing. You can run these advertisements like, okay, what's the average age of consent? What's the age of consent for marketing?
Right.
They decided on 13. Little did we know that there's going to be marketing of pornography to these 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I mean, 84% of kids that see porn for the first time it's incidental, meaning that either someone showed it to them
Right.
or they were just scrolling looking for something. They were on a smart device that wasn't locked down.
And there it was.
It didn't have a VPN on it.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere.
It's ubiquitous.
Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of the point.
Right. I mean, you even you look at, it's been around forever. Like sexual morality has been around forever, but it's the accessibility is exponentially increased. Like you look at Corinth, you look at Ephesus. These things have existed since the beginning of time, but the accessibility and the ability to access it and be discreet at the same time. So to your point, you asked me how prevalent it is in the church. Very, and it's a taboo subject that the enemy has used, his tactics where, guilt and shame has caused us to hide from being honest with one another, and everyone's struggling with it, but no one wants to say anything about it. So guilt and shame just keeps you trapped.
Just compresses.
And then when you hide the sin, it grows.
Yeah. Yep.
And then that's why we see, pastors falling. We see pedophilia on the rise. We see divorce on the rise. Yep. And I think it's an identity crisis at its nucleus. But pornography is contributing to it in a very real way.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you, Joshua. Well, I told you before, we were hanging out right now that, this has largely been a pro-life podcast, but for the last couple of years, I've been just talking about a lot more. And I research and study a lot about just our culture, how we got here, ideas, ideologies, worldviews. And you start to see how interconnected so much of this is that you can't talk about like abortion actually without talking about pornography and our sexualized culture. Like so much of this actually goes hand in hand. They're part of the same project in a way, if you will. I say, if you study the Old Testament, I think you'll agree with this, Joshua, that child sacrifice is the conclusion of the sexual revolution.
Sure.
You sexualize a community, they end up murdering their children. That seems to just be like one of the truisms.
Yeah.
And so I haven't talked a ton about pornography on this podcast, though I talk a lot about the sexual revolution, and a lot of the stuff goes together. But I mean, if you're listening to this, I mean, let's just be honest, like, the men in this room right now, myself, if you're listening to this, everyone struggled with porn. Everyone's been exposed to it. Most men who tell you they've never struggled with it are probably lying to you.
Right.
And praise God. I mean, I haven't had an issue since before I had kids. Yeah. But I mean, like, I think these conversations help free people. Yeah. Because then they know that, like, oh, I'm not like some weirdo. I'm not some. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm a creep. Maybe we're all creeps, but at least I'm not like a solo creep. Yeah. But like, at least there's grace for everyone. So that's why I wanted you, Joshua. I wanted you to bless people. Like, tell us your story, man. You know, because look at how God's using you today. But maybe take us to Hollywood. I don't know where you want to start, but take us to where this kind of began. Yeah, I mean, just kind of to weave everything together. Please. So I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. Okay. And the town was so small that you knew everyone. And my mom had me at a very young age. She got pregnant with me at 15, had me at 16, could have very easily chose not to have me, but that was not a choice in our home. And she chose to, as a kid, to have a kid. And what was problematic in my life, and it contributed to a lot of things, but my dad was never in my home or in my life, but he was in close enough proximity where I would see him. I would see him at the grocery store, see him at, because one grocery store, one gas station, so I would see him. And as a kid, it was confusing. As I got older, it became frustrating. And it made me believe I was inadequate. That's painful. And then, just having this high achiever personality, it's like, I've got to man up, I've got to overcome. And through accomplishments, which equates to affirmation, I believed, I could out-achieve the pain that I had in my heart. And that started with scholastics and then sports. And then I started modeling and acting when I was like 13, 14. And that was like my new drug of choice, meaning that, I would get the job or get the role or whatever it was. And that would give me that dopamine hit. It would make me feel good for a moment, but then reality would set in. And that continued into college. I was studying theater in college for a while. And then I thought, okay, I want to be in this industry. And it makes sense for me to be closer to it. So I dropped out of college, moved to Hollywood, and unlike a lot of people, I actually landed an agent, like, within a week of me being out there. Started going on auditions. I was more passionate about acting than I was modeling, but
it seemed like more modeling jobs was coming my way. So no argument, about money coming in. But again, being in a circle, I was just like, hey, I'm not as successful as my peers, so I need to do more. So I'm trying to live far beyond my means. And that landed me with, having to get another job to kind of mitigate my expenses. And I'm working at this like bar / steakhouse or whatever, where they don't take resumes, they take headshots,
Okay.
And
Sure.
I'm out there in that place, and then these 3 girls walk in this table, and they said, hey, have you ever thought about acting? And I was like, yes. They're going to introduce me to a casting agent, or they're working on a project, because that's often how you get your first break.
Sure.
But they were talking about pornography. Yeah. And for me, I saw porn for the first time when I was 13. I was very promiscuous through high school and college. So someone paying me to have sex and there being a video camera there, it was like, well, that's not a career that I want to pursue. It's not anything I've ever thought of. But at the same time, when you expose yourself to certain things, or you're exposed to it, you don't react a way that someone would have if they've not been exposed to it, because you develop an appetite for something. And I was just like kind of in that place where they're like, hey, we want to introduce you to our agent. And they were using language that kind of made sense to me. I'm like, okay, agent. I'm like, it seems sketchy, but you said agent. And then I'm thinking you're going to go to this, like, I'm going to meet this agent in like a Motel 6 or something. And he's going to like be picking lint out of his belly button or something weird. But I go to this.
I bet it was very clean and
but actually
very alluring.
Well, yeah. So I go to this like very nice like business studio like in Studio City. It's adjacent to Universal Studios. Wow. Walk in, there's Bentleys and Beamers in the garage, and go up this elevator, and this guy, he's an English guy, shaved head, 3-piece suit, big fat double Windsor knot, and he's hey, what are you doing out here? I want to know how'd you grow up. What are you doing here in LA, and what do you hope to accomplish? And in retrospect, very manipulative, ammunition that I gave him. I'm like, I grew up in a broken home. I grew up just pretty much me and my mom.
The industry obviously looks for this stuff.
Well, sure. It's like, I grew up just me and my mom. I'm here in LA. I want to act, and I guess I want to be famous. And it's so funny in retrospect when I say that, because I did say I wanted to be famous, and in my head I wanted to be famous, but no one wants to be famous. Like, that's not a goal to have. That's like that's a plausible reality that you're basing something on. Like, maybe you want to be successful, you want to have a successful career in acting, you want to pursue this. But for someone to say they want to be famous, it's like, I want to be seen. Right. I want to be known. I have a gap in my heart that I want to maybe fill it with that. Yeah. If I have enough followers, or if enough people applaud me, I'll feel a certain way. So you're really searching for a feeling. You're not searching to be famous. Wow. But I had this conversation with me, and he promises me, I'll make you famous and all this stuff. And
What year was this, Joshua?
2006.
Okay.
2006. So I do one, thinking like, what harm could it do? And very quickly, it just absolutely ruined my life. So I do this one film. It goes viral. So viral for 2006, like 500,000 views. And very quickly, my agent finds out. And it's like, well, it's very clear in this contract that, if you do something outside of something that we would want to align ourselves with, we can't represent you. So we wish you the best of luck, but we can't be associated with that. And then very quickly, again, growing up in a small town, my mom, word travels fast. So my mom's calling me.
Wow.
It's like, like Joshua Luke, in the South, if like the more of your name you use, the more trouble you're in. Yeah. But it's like, Joshua Luke, did you do that? And it's just, I'm having this like humiliating conversation with my mom. And then when you do, like, everyone, maybe not to that extent, but everyone, you fall flat at some point. You screw up, you do something you shouldn't have done, or maybe a job ends or a relationship ends, and you're in this crossroad, and it's so easy to allow that circumstance to dictate what you do next. Yeah. Especially if you've compromised. It's so much easier to continue compromising than the reality was I said to myself, well, because I did one, this is who I am, and there's nothing else I can do. I might as well continue doing it, which is not true. But that's the dangerous thing about a lie.
Yeah.
If you believe a lie to be true, it's true to you, and you create a worldview out of it.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, that's
Isn't
so
that
that's
true?
Yeah. So that's what I did. So it's like, well, I might as well continue doing it.
So it was just jump in the deep end after
Yeah,
that.
but for me, it's like if I'm eating chicken wings, or if I'm playing basketball, or if I'm playing Paw Patrols with my kid, like whatever it is, it's like it's got to be the best. I gotta 100% is all I know. So it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be in this industry, I'm going to become the most successful person in that industry, and I did that. So I was in the industry for 6 years, 18 awards, made over $1 million, did all these things, but I shared that because so many people believe if you had something, you would feel something.
Right.
If I make enough money, my heart wouldn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have this father wound. It would just go away. It wouldn't matter that I didn't have a dad. It wouldn't matter that I feel inadequate. That those things would just go away. And it actually ended up amplifying my anxiety, deepened my depression to the point where I found out I won Performer of the Year, which is the biggest award you can win in that industry. And I thought if I won that award, it's like everyone in the industry voted I was the best, I'm the guy, and it did nothing.
Yeah.
And then I very quickly, about 6 months later, I made a plan to take my life.
Wow.
And on the day I was going to take my life, I often when you're in that place, you'll make a kind of a deal. It's like, if this happens, I'll do it, or if this doesn't happen, I won't. So I had a check.
Okay.
And I just got back from Atlanta, flew into LAX. I was making the plan in my head. I set up what I was going to do, and I had this check. And on the memo of the check, it said like the title of the movie, which is always like grotesque. And I thought, okay, normally I would just go Dropbox or ATM because I didn't want to hand someone a check. It's like I'm a prostitute,
Sure.
It's like, but this time I wanted to do it because I thought, it was almost like a masochistic act where it's like if I hand this person this check, they're gonna like give me this like snarky look, or they're gonna say something to me,
Wow.
and that's gonna be the thing that pushed me over the edge. And instead, this person looks me in the eye and saw me broken and trembling and said, "Joshua, are you okay?
Wow.
Joshua, can I do something for you?" And
The person was gonna cash deposit it.
yeah, I'm just the teller.
Wow.
What she didn't know is that it'd been over a year since I had heard my name, because
Oh,
you go by a
right.
pseudonym in that industry, which
Yeah.
should, if the first thing you do is choose a name to cover up your name, what does that say about the industry? For everyone that says, I love my job that's in the industry, I love you, but no, you don't,
Yeah. Whoa.
But I hadn't heard my name in over a year, because the way accountability works is, you would call me out and call me up, and if you said, "Hey man, you're doing something that doesn't align with who I know you to be," I have two choices. I either push you away, or I say you're right, and I make a change. But I pushed everybody away: my mom, my brother, my fraternity brothers that were really like doing a good job of speaking into my life. They taught me how to tie a tie and like all these things that because I didn't have any role
Right.
models that were men. And I do all this stuff, but yeah, so I hadn't heard my name in a year.
From a bank teller.
And this bank teller says my name, and so instead of taking my life, I run for my life. And I'll speed the story up, but 2 years go by. I'm working at a gym. Again, same thing. If I'm gonna be a trainer, I'm gonna become the best. So I had the financial ability to do so. So I got every certification under the sun.
So you're still trying to fill something.
Yeah. So I'm knowing nutrition, gymnastics, like all these things. And still, I'm being successful in that industry. But still, I'm like at night, I'm broken, and I'm looking over my shoulder everywhere I go, because I cover up my tattoos, delete my social media, shave my head, believing like an idiot that, well, those 1,000 pornographic films that are partitioned into 100,000 pieces of content, they're just going to go away everywhere I went. Aren't you that guy?
Wow.
Aren't you that guy? And it doesn't happen as much anymore. But 11 years ago when I got out of the industry, it was on Showtime. I won, like I was the guy.
Wow.
So it sucked
Yeah.
because I just wanted to not be that person, And everyone kept reminding me I was.
Yeah.
And then, I'd get new personal training clients, and it was just like, it was a matter of time before they Googled me.
Oh, wow.
And just because it's just someone you do. It's like, like, who are they on social media? Like, what information can I find out about them? And it's like a lot,
Yeah, yeah.
And about 2 years of that goes by. This pretty girl walks into the gym, and I ask her out on a date, and she shuts me down. She's like, I'm not interested. And I was like, I'm in love, rejection, I'm in love. And she agrees to go on a run with me, and I meet her, and I'm just like, man, I just keep like burning like person after person after person, because sometimes lying to someone's face and withholding the truth hurts equally. And for a lot of the relationships I was having, I was withholding a lot of information. It would find out, and I would just deal with it when it would come out. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to hurt this person. It's almost like I heard my mom's voice in my head, like, boy, don't you hurt that girl, And so I told her, I'm like, hey, I like blacked out. I'm like, here's every bad thing I've ever done. Here's a case for how bad of a person I am. And she was pretty shocked. She was pretty shocked at what she heard. And then all of a sudden she got this like really serious look on her face and said, well, I want you to know a person's not defined by the worst thing they've ever done. And they're not defined by the greatest thing they'll ever do. God defines who a person is. He's the creator of all things, and he is the author of your story, not you.
Yeah.
And I was like,
whoa.
Wow. She's like, well, do you know who God is? And I was like, all I knew is that I didn't know who I was, but I was great at putting on the first date mask. And I'm like, I don't know who I am, but I'm going to be whoever you want me to be. So I'm like, yes, okay, yes. Yeah. Cosmological argument, like, yes. Like, what do you want to know? And she was like, well, what's your relationship with Jesus like? Where do you do life, with people? Like, are you plugged into a church anywhere? And I was like, you might as well be speaking another language. I was like, you got me. I was like, what if what you're asking me is that, I don't have that. And she's like, well, I've been following Jesus since I was in 7th grade. I'm not perfect by any means. My whole family's Christian, but Jesus is the foundation of my life, and my relationship with him dictates decisions that I make. So what kind of food do you like? I was like, what? It was like really like a really great representation of, wow. Ephesians, like Colossians like 4:6, like her speech being gracious and seasoned with salt, but how she ought to answer me.
Wow.
And it was just crazy. So I was like, this is nuts. She's asking me about my hopes and dreams, and I was like, I don't really have any. I'm just trying to survive. And we talked for a week, and then she invites me to church, and we go to church. And I grew up in I went to church pretty consistently until I was like 8 or 9. But it was like fire and brimstone. Like if you got a tattoo on your arm or a wrinkle in your shirt, you're going to hell, And all of a sudden, this guy in a t-shirt and jeans gets up and starts talking about, his relationship with Jesus. He's the pastor there, and he sounds and reminds me of my grandfather. And he starts telling this story from 2 Samuel about this dynamic between Jonathan and David. And historically, when so David was now the new king, and Jonathan had died, and historically the previous kingdom was wiped out. Everyone was killed because they didn't want anyone in the previous kingdom to think they had access to the new kingdom. Right. But David was different. He said, is there anyone left out of Jonathan's lineage? And Mephibosheth was still there. And they go and they find him, and Mephibosheth knew history, and he thought he was going to get killed. And instead of extending a spear, David's guard extended his hand and brought him into his kingdom and even restored his land. And then the pastor pivots to, well, you know what? Romans 3:23 says that we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And then Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death. So guess who's guilty? Everyone. Who's deserving of death? Everybody.
Yeah.
But guess what? Jesus, being fully God and fully man, came into this world, lived the life that you couldn't live, paid the debt that you owed, and he didn't stay dead. After he died on the cross, he rose on the 3rd day, solidifying he is who he claimed to be, Son of God, the Messiah. And if you put your faith in him, his righteousness is bestowed upon you. And it's just like everything made sense, and I'm like wrestling with it. But like, my dad didn't even want me. Why would God in flesh go to the cross and die for me? And at this point, it's like one of those moments where it's like no one else is there. It's just me and the pastor, Yeah. Even though it was a large church in Raleigh, it was just like, for me, it felt like he was talking directly to me. And then he shares He's like, well, why would Jesus go to the cross? He's like, with joy set before him, he endured the cross. It was obedience to the Father and love for me. So the Holy Spirit did something in that moment, and there was tears and snot. And when I stood up, I relinquished not the shame of the porn or the fatherlessness, the belief that I was not worth anything because God in flesh died for me. So that's what I was worth to the Father that I was looking for.
Yeah.
So that's, and then that girl that I went on that walk with, that's my wife. Yeah. So we've been married for 7 years. We've got 3 boys. But like for me, like the thing that like kind of flipped the script was like, again, I'm all in. And it's like, gosh, if God will redeem all aspects of your life, like Jesus is sovereign and Lord over everything. So if you give him everything, he'll redeem everything. And I was like, okay, I'm all in.
Yeah.
So like 3 days after that, I'm like, hey, here's my story. Can you teach me how to read the Bible? And then I spend, about 3 years. I was spending 15 to 20 hours a week with this guy, and he taught me how to read the Bible. And like next thing I know, like we're going through like basic biblical Greek with Bill Mounts, and I end up going to Liberty and get an undergrad in Christian ministries. And one of these days, I'm going to finish my master's. I'm chipping away at that, but
amazing.
But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and God continues to open doors for me to share His story, and more importantly, share the gospel.
Yeah, that's right. And now you speak all around the country.
Yeah.
Telling your story like you just did
Yeah.
to help break chains and give people the freedom to be honest and to throw off these shackles.
That's so, what you said is so powerful, though, because you're only as free as you're honest.
Yep. I think is it 1 John, Joshua, where it says that if you can confess your sins,
He's righteous and just,
to forgive you. But then I think also
James.
1 John, is it James? Maybe it's first. Maybe I'm mixing it up. But says that when you do this and then you walk in the light, He is in the light, then you will have fellowship with one another. But if you're keeping those areas in the darkness, and there's not light there, then you actually can't have real fellowship. Because you're not actually being you. As we wind down, Joshua, for the young men who are listening to this, maybe the young wives who have discovered that their husband has been lying to them, and has been hiding addictive pornographic behavior, or for the husbands who are still in addiction and lying to their wives, what would you say to those listening? What do they need to hear, and what would you encourage them towards if they're still living in bondage, fear, and lies?
Well, first and foremost, like if you're, if you know Jesus, well, Romans 8:1 says, therefore there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So shame and guilt, the things that keep you quiet, those things are from the enemy, but conviction, that's from the Lord. And if that conviction has gone away, like you've maybe wandered into a really dark place. But to the wife that maybe is found out that their husband is doing this, or maybe he's confessed to doing it, set boundaries, but understand, like, gosh, we're called to forgive because we've been forgiven for much, and it's a really, really difficult thing to navigate through. But I would say, if someone had the guts to confess that to you, gosh, they love you. They love you so much, because there's so much shame and guilt, and especially if someone's been struggling with that for half a lifetime.
Wow.
How much they love you, because they want to be free. And that's the way that it's so important to, as we walk this journey, because you're saved in a moment, but sanctification happens over a lifetime. And as you reach those new levels of consecration, there's going to be things in your life that maybe you're saved from, but you're not free from.
Wow.
And you could be walking with a limp and not even know it. Because it's like you're free, but you mentally you're still bound. And I would say, gosh, like tell someone. $100 billion industry. So if don't let the enemy trick you into believing that if you confess to someone you trust, like if you're a guy or girl, confess to the same sex, find someone you trust. You've got a buddy you talk about stupid stuff with all the time. Trust that he's either seen porn, maybe he's struggled with it in the past, but if he hasn't, he's known someone that has.
Yeah.
And just that's step one. Like, I would say even back up, like don't justify it. It's an evil industry. It contributes to sex trafficking. It contributes to pedophilia. It contributes to rape culture.
Yep.
94% of all pornographic scenes have some level of violence in it. So you see people doing things that are not natural, and they're acting them out. Heidi Olson, she's a critical care nurse in Kansas City, Missouri. There's hundreds of cases of kids raping their siblings. Hundreds of cases in one place, not all over the world. Hundreds of cases in one place. This happens year after year after year. 100% of the time, the kids are watching pornography and they're acting it out. And that's, it's crazy that it is.
Doesn't surprise me.
It's not surprising. So these are the conversations that the church must have, because to your kids, you have to answer two questions. If you're not going to have that conversation, why didn't you tell me? And why what I heard first is different from what you're saying. Now I have to provide an apologetic for someone that's the what's being propagated in schools. It's insane. Like I was sharing this earlier. There's a church on a mountain in El Salvador where people are starving to death. There's dirt floors. They don't have running water. They have an outhouse. But you know what they do have? They have a book that says, this is why God made you a boy. This is why God made you a girl. They're not running from basic conversations that we're called to have.
Yep.
You're equipping people with knowledge. And if you rob them from that, the world's going to educate you.
That's good.
That's why like Romans 12:2 is so important. You're either being conformed by the world, you're being conformed by a screen, you're being conformed by a teacher in a classroom that doesn't care about you, or we're going to stand on the word of God, and that's going to be the line of the sand that we draw. But I would say to the person struggling, tell someone, and then put some appropriate boundaries in your life. Put a VPN on your phone, get some accountability. For me, the thing that changed my life was like two practical things. I stopped bringing my phone into my bedroom or bathroom. Simple. If you're a young guy that's struggling with pornography and masturbation, like do something practical. Like don't put yourself in places where you're going to fall.
Yep.
Remove the temptation. And
what do you think about this one? This is what I tell young men, Joshua. I say, get covenant eyes, and then put your mother-in-law on the accountability email list.
Yeah, absolutely.
You like that one?
Yeah.
That's what
I love it.
And young men laugh at me.
I love it.
Like they think I'm joking,
work.
and I'm like, oh, you thought I was joking.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you're still in bondage, so I actually wasn't joking. You need to figure out some radical behavior.
Yeah, because accountability only works if you're held accountable by that person.
Yep.
You know, so it's like for me, the thing that changed my life, that was like my commitment to honesty. And it's just like this, we would have, me and this guy, Andrew Yates is his name, to this day, weekly, we'll have hot conversations, honest, open, transparent. And he's going to ask me, how am I doing emotionally? How am I doing, spiritually? How am I doing physically? Because all these things contribute to your behavior.
Right.
Because, we are, whatever is in our hearts and our heads, the byproduct of that is that they overflow into our behavior. So what am I struggling with? What am I frustrated with? What am I, what am I going through? What did I do? What did I see? How did I feel when I saw it? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the solution to the pornography addiction isn't just stop watching porn. I need to get to the root. Why do I say yes to something I know? Romans 7. It's like, why do I do the things that I don't want to do? But there's a reason. There's a trauma. There's a lack. There's something in my life that I need to dig into and process. And then and only then I'm going to be free from the pornography, which is just me medicating the other thing.
Wow. Joshua, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're out of time, unfortunately. Next time, I want to have you back on and talk about a line from Augustine's City of God, libido dominandi. It means sexual liberation as political control.
Yeah.
That if you can sexualize people and get them to indulge every animalistic appetite they have, they're very easy to control.
Sure.
So the sexual revolution becomes a prerequisite for the social revolution.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll talk about that next time. But
let's do it.
But Joshua, thank you for telling your story, seriously. And if you guys are listening to this, I hope you take him up on what he said. I hope you break free. I hope you're honest.
Yeah.
Or honest, open, and transparent.
Yeah.
But seriously, you need to put your mother-in-law on your accountability email list. Let's see how that if that'll break your pornography consumption.
Yeah.
And then be in community, be in fellowship. But hey, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your story, or if you're listening to this and you're a pastor and you're like, whoa, I want Joshua to come share this at my church?
Yeah, so all my social media across the board is I am Joshua Broome, and my website is joshuabroome.me. So that's where I do all the bookings and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you
for coming on.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. Head over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give the show a rating and review. Go subscribe at Rumble. We're back on YouTube now that the Thought Police have allowed us to share some things again. But seriously, we might completely be removed someday. So just go subscribe at Rumble. We would appreciate that. And you can follow us on Instagram. If you want to become a member of the White Rose Resistance and an ally to help us rebuild Christian resistance against the culture of death, go to thewhiterose.life, sign up for $35 a month, and we're about to launch our digital circle at the end of September. That's our digital community. You're going to get activism, assets, resources, training, live calls with me, live calls with special guests that we'll bring on in the future, people like Joshua, and then at $75 a month, you get to enter our Culture War book club with yours truly to equip, educate, and encourage and inspire you to mobilize to be the Church of Christ in the public square for righteousness. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is Unaborted.